Welcome one and all to yet another Kings of War battle report. And as you know, there is a trend on this channel. Each video is more red hot, more spicy, and much hotter than the video that preceded it. And this trend clearly continues here, as you can see, because we are in the fiery, smouldering, ashy wastes for this particular game, with two lovely green hills plonked in the middle of it. So I am working on getting some lava-themed terrain, especially for when my next Kings of War army is ready. That's kind of going to be their home domain. If you don't know what they are, then you should by now, because there have been a couple of videos on them. Anyway, let's dive into this battle report. This is 2,500 points of juicy, sizzling, spicy goodness, and it is the Scavenge scenario. Ogres versus Dwarves. It's my golden Stormcast Ogres versus the grey-based Dwarves over there. And this is tournament practice, but not for me, just for my opponent, because I'm not attending the tournament in question. So I just put together a list that I thought would be fun to try out with my Ogres. So let's go through it, shall we? We've got down at the bottom there. In fact, you know what? We're going to go all high-tech now, because look at this. We've got an arrow. Let's see if this messes up somehow. So we have ogre shooters, and they are elite with the blessing of the gods on them. Next up, we have some boomers, carrying bows, of course, but only short range attack. Then we have a captain on a chariot up there. There he is. Next up, we have a chariot horde with the potion of the caterpillar. So they'll be heading for all the difficult terrain, so that they won't have any hindrances there, whereas other units would. One unit that wouldn't is this guy, the Colossal Giant, and it's much closer to the correct base size. I've used him as a regular giant before the Colossal Giant came around, but it's still slightly too big, even for the Colossal, who's meant to be on 75mm. This guy's on a 100mm base, so still slightly too big. Then moving on, we have two boomer sergeants. We've got one here and one here. And between them, we have Grokkagamok's finest braves. And right behind them, we have Grokkagamok himself. And next along, we've got a horde of siege breakers. And this unit has the healing charm. Then at this flank, we have another horde of siege breakers. They don't have any upgrades. And another captain on a chariot. So that is the ogre force. Opposite that minor side of the ogre army, we've got some Brock riders with the Brew of Strength. There is a Brock hero, and I believe he's got Blade of the Beast Slayer, so very good against large infantry, which the ogres are almost entirely made up of. Then there is a regiment of rangers there. And you can see they've already made a vanguard move up, and they have some kind of upgrade as well, but I can't see the card. Moving along, we've got two organ guns. There are actually two troops of shield breakers around here somewhere. There is a horde there as well. I think they're also shield breakers. And these guys here are the regular Iron Guard, the two regiments, one there and one there. There is a Mastiff hunting pack, I think they're called. They're just a combat unit. There's the battle driller. That's one of the troops of shield breakers there. And there is the extra juicy and spicy steel behemoth, which I believe, is he called Golok or something like that? The special one anyway, that's extra spicy. There's the third organ gun. There's the other troop of shield breakers. There's the second Mastiff hunting party, and the second Brock Rider unit, and this one has the Brew of Sharpness, and there is another Brock Berserker Lord, and this one has the Wings of Honeymaze, so he can fly, so he might be quite troublesome, although I do have a reasonable amount of breath attacks to deal with him. Now, you can see where the Scavenge tokens are. So Scavenge scenario, if you're not familiar, if you're controlling any of the tokens at the start of one of your turns, then one of those units that are controlling it can generate a loot token and hold on to it. But each unit can only carry one. And when you kill a unit in close combat, you can choose to destroy it or steal it. Of course, if stealing it would take you above 1, then you just wouldn't be allowed to steal it, so that would be a good reason for you to possibly destroy it. There's another one there, and the other one is all the way over here. Now, I had the opportunity to place this one last, so I could have compacted the game into a smaller area, which you may think would have been beneficial to me, since I've got lots and lots of hard-hitting close combat units, and I'm out-dropped as well, so I couldn't put too much over on this left flank. But if I'm going to take this much effort to laying out the terrain and picking a nice spicy-looking army, and I want us to use more of the table, I think. Otherwise, this big impassable castle, which I painstakingly picked up from the shelf and put down on the table, would be totally unused. So we can get rid of that arrow for now. Back into low tech, and we're in turn 1, and the dwarves elect to go first. And I probably would have gone first, given the opportunity, because I would have liked to have got up onto those scavenge tokens, forcing the enemy to push towards me a bit. And the only thing that's losing out from my opponent going first is that his organ guns won't be able to shoot in turn 1. And you can see the Brocks on the hill facing down. Some of my units there moved up. But they wouldn't quite stay on the hill, so there's something propping them up there, and the other units are just chilling around them. That is the Berserker Lord with the honey maze wings there over on the right. In the middle, everything's moved up. Even the organ guns have moved, just in case the ogres didn't feel like moving. Everything moving up, but not very fast because they're dwarves and there's difficult terrain everywhere as well. Another at their battle line. And over on this flank, the Brocks moved up, and the Rangers, they've got a little bit of shooting power, and they plink 1 damage onto the captain on a chariot, who is just chilling out over there. And look at that beautiful glare on the mat. Yeah, this is one of the less expensive version of the battle mats. You can get them in the nice mouse mat material as well, which I recommend if you are not under any particular budget restraints. And this is the slightly cheaper one, and from one angle, of course, you are going to get a bit of glare because it is a bit shiny. Not so on the mouse mat ones though. Turn 1 for the ogres. And look at that. The boomers have moved into position there and immediately shot down the flying Berserker Lord. He stayed out of all their charge ranges, but he didn't stay out of range to be boomed to death. He is dead. It was a very good roll that got rid of him though. So you can see where he is right at the top of the screen there. Right, let's get the arrow back. This is some seriously high-tech stuff here. There he is. So, my plan at this stage, other than just kill him, I do not want the Brocks to charge anybody. Especially my important units, because they could probably, with decent rolling, especially with the artifacts they have, kill most of what I have, most of my units, in a single round. Even something with ridiculously high nerve like the Colossal Giant wouldn't really like to take a risk against a regiment of Brock Riders who have the Brew of Sharpness or the Brew of Strength. It's still a little bit dicey. So what I'm going to do is just throw something into both the Brock units and tie them up. And I've got my chariot-mounted captains who are going to be perfect for that job. Everything else can then go up into this kind of middle area, close to the tokens, within range to generate scavenge tokens next turn, but outside of charge range of everything else, because all my opponent's speed is out on the flanks. There's nothing in the middle, which is where the main juiciness of the tokens are sitting. So if I can just clog up the Brocks, because in this turn I don't want to have to shoot the Brocks. I want to shoot him and kill him with the boomers, and the shooters on their own won't kill the Brocks in one round, so it's pointless even shooting them. I might as well just throw a captain in there, stop them charging anything, which will then allow me to advance, and then the shooters can just target something else. And over on this side I've got a captain that can target these Brocks over here as well. So the arrow assisting with the tactical insight there. So the Berserker Lord is dead. Shooters do a bit of damage and actually waver this unit of Iron Guard there. Dwarves don't mind being wavered too much though, because they're all headstrong, so we'll see if they can shrug that off. And over here, this is still in that same side of the battlefield. You can see the captain does thrust himself into these Brocks, and the other benefit to doing this is that they will lose their Thunderous Charge as well when they counterattack. They may still kill whatever attacked them, but I was able to pick what was fighting them rather than them going into maybe the flanks of my units if I was advancing up, which would be seriously bad news. And there you can see that allowed me to push up the Chariot Horde and the Colossal Giant right up to the edge of the woods there. So the Chariot Horde could actually start creating tokens. It's very close to the middle one there. So if the enemy wants to stop me doing that, they'll have to come forwards into the woods and then get charged. And I'm going to assume that Mr. Battle Driller, you can see right here, is not going to stay there in my opponent's next turn, because otherwise he could be charged and potentially overrun by any of these huge gargantuan units I've got here. And down over onto this side, you can see that Grokgamok is not on the hill. And let's just point you to exactly where he is here. There is the old Grokster. He's off the hill, right behind his Braves, because I do not want him to be gunned down by the organ guns. And if he was standing just on top of the hill on his own, it may give him more charge options in the next turn. Because he's nimble as well, he would be able to pick his way around all my units without any kind of blocked sight. But he would also be mercilessly gunned down horribly by organ guns, I think. So we wouldn't want that. And moving on, as the Siege Breakers are moving up as well, and I'm hiding the two Boomer Sergeants, who would be a very juicy target for organ guns, because they're definitely killable in one round, and they're much lower defense than the Siege Breakers, so they are hiding from the organ guns range, and everything is staying out of range of all these dwarf infantry units, apart from the Mastiffs. I think I've put myself in range of them because I'm not worried about them whatsoever. But everything else is going to be out of range next turn. If he wants to shoot at the Siege Breakers, they're defense 6 in the front, so that's okay. Hopefully wouldn't take them out in one go. Everything's inspired around here as well. And if he wants to shoot at Grokgamok's finest Braves, they're unwaverable and they have obscenely high nerve. So good luck with that one, I would say. Over here, the other captain has also thrust himself mightily into the Brock Riders. And the Siege Breakers there have just positioned themselves a bit to stare down that area. I'm not banking on this side of the battlefield going that well for me. I'm really just hoping to hold up all these enemy units and hopefully kill one of them so that my opponent can only generate one token and then just sit with that one token there for the whole game. Because they're quite far away from the action here with that big piece of impassable terrain in the way. So even if I'm not going to win this fight overall, I would hope to kill something before I do ultimately lose. And you can see a bit of damage done there, but not much. So there's the nice wide shot. So what is my opponent likely to do here? Well, this guy here, this Brock Lord, this Berserker Lord, is going to probably throw himself in here to tie them up. That seems like the best option. And that would allow the Rangers to not get into the action yet. Brock's countercharging him, of course. Everything else I would expect to just move up. The hunting party here is an interesting one, because they are in charge range. Are they going to charge, or are they going to position themselves to block the maximum number of units? We shall see, because there is a way they could move forward and possibly not charge there, and kind of try and box in as many units as possible. I'm not sure if they're actually nimble, so whether they could do that remains to be seen. They could still give it a bit of a go. And turn 2 for the Dwarves. So on the right flank for me, we have a double charge with one of the troops of Shield Breakers and the Brocks countercharging into the captain on the chariot, so he's likely to die. But he was always likely to die anyway, and that's really just buying me a turn so that I can then shoot at these units with all my shooty units of death that are over on this side. In the middle, everything's moving up a bit, and they weren't able to charge. However, they have positioned themselves. Unknown whether it was intentional or not, but this gap here is not big enough for the Colossal Giant. Because of his obscenely huge base, he's not going to be able to fit through and charge this horde, which is what I would like to do next turn. Because when this unit bounces off, which they obviously are going to do because they're not going to kill the Braves in one round, the gap they leave is not going to be large enough for the Colossal Giant to fit through there, which is unfortunate, which is going to limit my options, but we'll get back to that when the time comes. So over on this side, you can see that Mastiff hunting party, I'm not sure if they're hunting party or hunting pack, I think it's party. So they go into Grokgamok's Braves, and the Iron Guard there are just chilling out opposite the Siege Breakers. Not able to charge anyone yet, so they're just chilling. And there's how the battle line looks. So I think it's Golluck's Fury, the extra large steel behemoth. That is eligible to shoot because it's height 4. There's going to be no hindrance on its gun shooting it over its own troops. So let's see what shooting damage can be inflicted in a minute. Over here you can see that Berserker Lord on Brock does fly in. Well, not fly, it was the other one that was flying and he's dead. But he does run in very rapidly, as fast as those little badger legs will carry him, into the Siege Breakers there. Organ guns, what do? Well, first of all, we have another picture of them. And then they shoot at the Siege Breakers, and look at that, 9 damage. It's quite tasty, but they do not manage to waver them. Unless they do, and there just isn't a picture of it yet. And that, you can see the organ gun up there. There we go, that organ gun right there. 5 damage onto the chariot horde. Moving on, and the captain on the chariot is dead, of course, as expected, but I'm going to be able to shoot those Brocks, and they're already heavily damaged. That's how they position themselves afterwards. I think they might be out of the chariot's charge arc there. I want to shoot them to death regardless. Now here, the positioning of this unit here, when those Mastiffs bounce off the full 1 inch, there is actually space for Grokgamok's Braves to flank charge into the Iron Guard there, which would be an interesting proposition. It would then free up Grokgamok to charge at somebody. However, is that wise? Get to that when we look at the wide shot in a minute. Over here you can see that a little bit of damage is done to those Siege Breakers on the left, but not a lot. And the captain is wavered, which is fine because he's really just there to hold them up. Okay, so here is our wide shot from an angle that doesn't produce quite as much glare, and let's get the arrow back into play. So, you probably can't see very well here, but the finest Braves are right here, and they have the option of flank charging this unit right here. And if they do that, would it be overkill because the Siege Breakers are already there, charging them in the front? Is it necessary? Are they needed to charge into that flank as well? Would they be better off just charging into this unit here and kind of shielding Grokgamok? Because if they charge in the flank there, and the Grokster charges in there, the Grokman would be opening himself up to being charged possibly by this horde, depending on whether there's space. I could charge the Giant and the Chariot Horde into any of these units here, but not these units over here. They are safe. So what I'm going to ultimately do is double charge this unit here, which is going to lead to the Chariot Horde presenting its flank to these units. But I'm not concerned by that because I can target all these units with shooting this turn. So I would hope that any one of them would be able to flank charge the chariots. And the amount of wounds it's already on, which is 5, it's even a charge in the front with these units would probably kill it anyway, with both of them. So I'm not overly concerned about exposing the flank. And the Giant's also going to go in there, because I want that unit to die, big time. I don't just want to send in the Giant in there, because that would allow the Giant to be flanked by this horde. If I send them both in, that'll push the Giant far enough along so that this horde cannot then flank the Giant. So that is going to be my strategy here. Hope that was clearly explained. So turn 2 for me, and the Brocks go down to the shooters. They're already wounded and they are toast. I think I may have had to shoot them with the boomers as well though. That's the boomers also tied up. You can see that I've moved one of my boomer sergeants behind the chariot horde there so he can target that troop of shield breakers. 3 damage, but it's a waver, so hopefully they'll fail the headstrong, but it's not very likely. The Chariot Horde and the Colossal Giant kill off that regiment as expected. They just completely annihilate it and position themselves in such a way that the Giant is not going to get flanked by anybody. Here, the Siege Breakers, because I elected not to charge the Grokkamok's Braves into the flank of that unit, meaning that I only get a waiver on them, so I'm possibly regretting doing that now. I chose to not do anything with the Grokster and just hide him for another turn. So we'll see whether that comes back to bite me, not killing that unit, leaving a headstrong unit still there with my heavily wounded Siege Breakers. So it's not always the best choice to kind of double up on something, but I think on this occasion maybe I should have gone for that, and Grokkamok could have still killed the unit that was sitting here. I think there would have been space. Well, actually no, there wouldn't. You know what, Grokkamok wouldn't have been able to do anything anyway, because he would have had to move backwards to allow them to perform that charge, because he was right up against them. So yeah, that's right. However, I think I have moved him onto the hill at this stage. We'll check on that in a second. You can see here that there was previously an organ gun right here, but it's now dead because of the Boomer Sergeant right here. Kills it dead. And right here, fair bit of damage done onto this Berserker Lord on Brock, but he's going to be okay. Over on this flank, Captain just isn't able to do anything there, just chilling out. He's waving. And there's how it's looking. So, what is my opponent going to do now? Presumably he's going to charge the Giant with that huge horde there. There's also Golluck's Fury, which is in range to charge the Giant now as well, so we could be looking for some double charge action. Battle Driller might struggle to get involved in any of this though. And there are the two units on the flank of the Chariot Horde who I would expect to charge into that, which is okay because they're not going towards my shooting units and I can still be a huge threat to them. The Chariot Horde did pick up they generated a token because I was controlling that area. Turn 3 for the Dwarfs, so of course the double charge does go in on the flank of the Chariot, so that Chariot Horde is going to die, but like I said, I think it was going to die anyway, and I think it was more important to preserve the flank of the Giant, since him being flanked would be devastating since he wasn't wounded at all. Golluck and the horde of Shield Breakers charge into the front of the Giant, and I think we've got the sharing of the facing correct here. I had a quick look in the rulebook as we were doing this just to make sure, but I think you hang them off roughly an equal amount on each side. And that unit of Iron Guard there, they fail their headstrong roll by the looks of things, which is very, very nice indeed, but the unit that's charging the flank of the Chariots certainly didn't fail its roll, but this one did, so that's quite fortunate. So that's going to give me another turn to deal with them. And over on this side, the Rangers spawn a token, and then they charge headlong into the Siege Breakers, along with the Brock Lord who's gone into them again, and the Brocks up there have gone back into the Captain again. So they'll probably finish him off this time. And what does the Organ Gun do? Well, it shoots at my Boomers over on my right flank. 2 damage. Fine, and what does this Organ Gun do? Well, there's a close-up of it. It does 4 damage to my Boomer Sergeant who blasted off the other one. My Boomer Sergeants, by the way, are represented by Stormcast War Machine crew. Over there, the Chariot Horde is dead. Now, it's very possible it could have died with a frontal charge with this level of damage being done, regardless. I think it was on 5, so if we assume it would have taken half as much damage in the front from those units, then that would still be 6, putting it on 11. It's still not in the healthiest way. So possibly looking at a waiver. And that is how they turn themselves. So one unit steals the token from the Chariots, and the other is just facing towards the Giant. But speaking of the Giant, it takes 12 damage in the front, so with its dash 20 and being in inspiring range of Grocky, it's going to be absolutely fine. Siege Breakers over on the left flank, they become wavered as a result of that double charge, which is a little bit unfortunate. I was hoping that they could avoid that. And had they survived that, my plan here was going to be to countercharge into the Berserker Lord on Brock, who's already heavily damaged, kill him, and then overrun into the Rangers, because if we go back a shot, you'll see, actually no, you can't see in that shot. I don't know if you can see him at all, but just to the right of this image, we have a Boomer Sergeant who is ripe for the plucking to turn round, head over to the left, and he would have been able to boom through the individual Berserker Lord into the Rangers and put a bit of damage on them before the overrun happened in the shooting phase. So I could have then possibly overrun the Berserker Lord into the Rangers, who are already damaged, and maybe even killed them as well, and just completely butchered this flank in one go, with only the Brock Riders left alive. So unfortunately that waiver is going to prevent that battle plan from being hatched. So that would have been really nice, but unfortunately not. And the captain is dead as well, so this flank is now a collapse. And there's how they turn themselves afterwards. So, what am I going to do here? So, I've got some interesting conundrums coming up now. So, I've got plenty of charge options. The Giant, I believe the Giant and these guys, the Braves, cannot double charge the Steel Behemoth, which is really what I wanted to do, but there just isn't enough space, because when the Giant moves in, when he gets to the right spot for sharing half, then this unit just can't quite fit past him. And I don't think they are able to go in first because he's too far back. I think the amount of pivoting they have to do to get past his base, they end up going like this kind of direction, just missing it. So that is unfortunate. I don't think you can see very well from this angle, but his base is like a centimetre or so overlapping with theirs. So by the time they've pivoted, they just miss the base. And the Colossal Giant, he could potentially charge into this Horde. I could double charge into the Horde with the Giant and the Braves, but that leaves Golok there, totally untouched. Then I've got the Grokster who could charge in there. So I've got options. I think what I'm ultimately going to do is send the Giant into the Horde, send the Braves into Golok's Fury. I really wanted the Giant to go in there, but it's just not possible because that keeps these guys out of the game. So the Giant is going to have to go into the Horde. Braves are going to have to go into Steel Behemoth. And then Grokkagamok, well, we'll see what I've got in store for him. Okay, here we go. So I think, is there even a picture of the turn dice here? Oh, you can see what's going on this side. And on to my turn 3. So the shooters, they waver this Mastiff pack, this Mastiff hunting party that's got the token. And over here, the Boomers and the Boomer Sergeant, they kill off the other unit that was there, which was the Shield Breaker troop. So that's dead, which is nice. The Giant does go into the Horde, does an obscene amount of damage. And look at that, 12 damage. They're ripe for the finishing off at some point now. The Finest Braves go into Golok's Fury there, and 7 damage on it, which is an okay start. It's got really high defense though, so it's a bit tricky. Over on this side, the Boomer Sergeant wavers the Organ Gun, which is nice, but it is headstrong. And the Siege Breakers finish off the unit of Iron Guard that was staring them down, and I think I choose not to send Grok anywhere, which possibly a mistake. Is he perhaps out of charge range of the unit that I really wanted him to charge? I think that may have been the case. So what I want to do with Grok here is just sit at the back within range of that token, because you can see that the Braves already have one. I want Grok to generate a token, which he wouldn't have been able to do, I don't think, if I'd somehow found a way to charge him either over towards one of these units over here, get him in that direction, or over into this infantry horde, which I don't think he would have been able to see regardless of what I'd done. So the only way he would have got into the fight would have been if I found a way to double charge both these units into the infantry horde and then Grok in there, which I think was maybe possible, but it would have been a hindered charge for him anyway. And I think on the counter charge I wouldn't have necessarily fancied his chances there. So possibly you can pick out some mistakes in there. think there may have been some other options for me, but when I've used him before, often he's just got horribly killed as soon as he's put near the enemy. So I'm maybe holding him back a little bit too much here. Over on this side, you can see that the Rangers and the Berserker are going into the Siege Breakers again. The Berserker Lord was pondering running away, but it would have required the Rangers getting out the way and then just shooting at the Siege Breakers, which would not have been the best. So they decided to go for the double charge in the front again. And you can see that here we've got a bit of a close-up that just shows there is a token on that unit, because I don't know if it was clear earlier. And look at that lovely bit of glare. Bit of a wide shot going on. And wait just a gosh darn minute there. I've been talking like it's already in that enemy turn. Yes, the enemy turn hasn't actually happened yet, but that is what they're going to do. That thing I just told you about. So, yeah, they do pick up that token, and there's the wide shot, and now we're in the opposing turn. So, the organ gun. Just a picture of it. Very nice. So, the battle driller and the shield breaker horde charge into the giant. The steel behemoth countercharges the berserker braves. And they're also flank charged by this unit as well. Which isn't very tasty. Over on this side, you can see that that double charge I described from an earlier picture does actually happen. And look at this, very unfortunate that one of the organ guns shoots off the boomers in one round. And I think they were only mildly damaged, so that's not very nice at all. They're dead. The giant is dead, which isn't nice at all. And the braves are dead. So we've just lost the middle of the battle line here. And looking back at the pictures, I thought I'd explored absolutely every movement option because it was very congested in there. And if you're going to charge units, if you're going to double charge, then you have to be able to see the units at the time of the initial charge, which was complicating what I wanted to do as well. But because of the space involved and the alignment of the units and the positioning of everything, all the multi-charges I explored didn't look wise. So I can't remember the exact charges I was looking at, but it seemed to me that I made the best choice. But perhaps not. So you can see that that whole area is looking pretty clear now, and the units have turned to face the imminent threat. So the Grokster is going to be able to charge into a wounded unit there, either the Behemoth or the Horde, and the Siege Breakers are going to be able to toast that little troop there as well, with their mighty Hammers of Death. These Siege Breakers become wavered again, which is a bit fortunate this time. They were maybe unfortunate to be wavered last time, and fortunate to survive with just a waver this time. Turn 4 for the Ogres, so not much they can do. And the other unit of Siege Breakers, I think they've used their Healing Brew by now. And they charged into that troop and annihilated them. The Boomer Sergeant kills the other organ gun that was over here with his breath attack, I think. He didn't want to walk out too far over there, if I recall. Or did he charge it? I don't remember. I don't think there's a picture of that exact spot, but he attacked it anyway, and it's dead. So, here Grokkamok charges into the Steel Behemoth and didn't roll particularly well, didn't get very many hits. It's a hindered charge, but you still expect him to do a bit of damage. Not much, though, unfortunately. The Boomer Sergeant killed the hunting party that was chilling there with the token, and then he stole it from them. Is it hunting pack? Oh. I'll just keep calling them different things each time, so 50% of the time it's going to be right. The Shooter Horde, what do? They waver that big gigantic horde shooting into cover. They actually do a bit of damage and get a waver on them, which is nice. And that unit is also stealthy as well. They have the fog, which I don't think I mentioned earlier. So shooting at them was very much a last-ditch effort. I just needed to get a little bit of damage on them, though. They're already damaged. I just wanted to have a chance at wavering them, and maybe they'll fail their headstrong, because if they don't, then they can flank I'm not sure if they can actually see Grocky actually, but they'll be able to turn and face that way regardless. They may be able to see him though. Turn 5 for the enemy, and surely they're going to finish off these siege breakers over on the left flank now. And the Behemoth ignores the Grokster and just charges straight into the shield breakers, the siege breakers instead. He's got much more chance of killing that unit since they're already heavily damaged, and Battle Driller goes into Grokster. And I think that Horde failed their Headstrong roll. So mixed results with the Headstrong in this game. Organ Gun, what does it do? Puts a bit of damage onto the Boomer Sergeant who's just hanging out there. So, the Siege Breakers are dead, killed by the Behemoth. Grok only takes a tiny bit of damage though, and the other Siege Breakers are dead as well on the left flank, which is going to free up the enemy a bit. So that's how they position themselves afterwards to face the action, but they're chilling on a couple of tokens over there. However, look at this. So, my opponent has completely run out of time with an entire turn left to play. So, generally in these games, we run the clock at whatever the amount of time specified in the tournament, but it's really just as a guide to make sure we're playing at the right speed. We typically carry on after the clock, unless we specified beforehand that we're actually stopping at the clock. So my opponent has timed out, so all that really says is you need to play faster. And turn 5 for the Ogres now. So, double charge, Grocky and the Boomer Sergeant into the Horde in the woods, and they kill the unit. So they are both sitting on tokens now, so if we were playing with the tournament conditions with the real timeout, I would have at least a draw on my hands here, because I've got 2 tokens and my opponent currently has 2. So, obviously with no time left, he wouldn't be able to get any more points, but we are going to carry on playing. The shooters don't hit anything. So, in this situation here, if we were playing as dice down, no more movement, no nothing at the end of the clock, what could I have done? Well, Grokgamok, because he's carrying a token, he wouldn't... not sure if he's in range to actually charge the Steel Behemoth, because he's carrying the token, so he's slowed down. He might be. He could be in range there, in which case that's what he would do, to try and kill it. And then the Boomer Sergeant would just move forward as far as it can to get close to the Scavenge token, so he could hopefully generate one in either turn 6 if he can get close enough, or more likely hope for a turn 7 where he'd be able to create one. So that would be the likely outcome if we were playing it that way, but we ain't. So here we go. Continuing, turn 6 for the Dwarves. So the Organ Gun kills the Boomer Sergeant in the woods. The Battle Drill charges into Grokgamok, and you can see that the other Boomer Sergeant is also killed as well, shooting. I think that was with the giant Steel Behemoth of Doom that killed him with the shooting attack after pivoting. Grok doesn't take much damage though, so yeah, there it is, it's pivoted. And the fact that it's pivoted means that I actually think that I may have forgotten which way Grokgamok was facing here. But regardless, the shooters are actually in range to shoot the Behemoth now because it's pivoted. Previously they weren't in range. So turn 6 for the Ogres, it's going to be a loss, but let's see what we can kill. And the shooters do actually kill off the Behemoth at long range. They do a little bit of damage, just enough to finish it. And Grokgamok moves out of the woods, and I think I possibly did forget which way he was facing, you know. Because of the model, I think where the hammer is actually supposed to be forwards. I'll confirm that in a minute, but I was playing it like he's looking forwards towards that green token, which I think is wrong, because if you look at this, I think I left him facing towards the Steel Behemoth here. So the Battle Drill actually charged him in the flank, but I may have forgotten and thought it was in the front, because that's the way the model's stance is facing. But I think I messed that up there. It doesn't really matter though, because the game was already lost by that point. But because Grokgamok wouldn't have been able to pick up the token that the Behemoth was carrying, because he's already got one. So we do actually get turn 7, which isn't going to affect the outcome at all, but it's going to deprive me of a point because the Battle Driller and the Brocklord are both charging the Grokster, and he is annihilated. And with my turn, the shooters have a bit of a shot over there at the Lord, but they don't kill him. So, yep, that is the end of that. So my opponent is carrying 2 tokens over there on the Brock Riders and the Rangers. They were fairly unopposed over there after that one critical moment when the Siege Breakers became wavered. If they hadn't done that, that would have been quite important over on that flank. Like I was describing earlier, they could have overrun the Brock Lord, who was heavily wounded, then into the Rangers, who would have taken shooting damage beforehand, and then possibly been left one-on-one with the Brock unit, which they may well have lost, but that would have meant that my opponent only had 1 token over on that side, and would have held them up for longer, possibly. In the middle, I think it all kind of went wrong when I wasn't able to pull off the charges I was looking for. If my Colossal Giant was on the correct base size, I think it would have helped a lot, because he takes up an awful lot of space at the base I have. I could actually fit him onto one that's the correct size now, but it would mean cutting him off his round base, which is a possibility, because I'm very unlikely to ever use him in Age of Sigmar again, since he was a proxy model in the first place, and he was proxy for a made-up unit, so I only really use him in Kings of War now, so I might as well put him on the correct size base for a Colossal Giant, which would mean that I can pull off all the red-hot, sizzling, juicy, succulent, moist multi-charges that I want. So my shooters survived anyway, so not everything died. I think I made a mistake with the shooters, actually. So they, while being right in the corner, I wanted them there to counteract that flank of the enemy with the Brocks that were over there. But a unit like that, because they've got reload, they don't want to be moving for most of the game. So you really want them in a position where they don't have to move too much, but are still in a position to threaten one of the objectives. With the way they were positioned, they would have had to move for 2 or 3 turns to actually get to within range of one of the tokens. So that's 2 or 3 turns of them not shooting, which is unacceptable. If you put them closer to the middle with near one of the tokens, you could just have 1 turn to move at the double up to the token when everything's cleared out from around there, and then generate a token and then possibly turn the next turn. So it's 1 less turn of not being able to shoot, basically. And I think keeping that in mind would have been optimal, shall we say. So that's the end. It's a loss for the Ogres, a win for the Dwarves, which is a quite handy little practice there. Hopefully my opponent was able to take some lessons on his list and how to deal with high defense army that outspeeds you for the most part. Most of the units anyway, especially in the middle, because of course Ogres being mostly speed 6, or even the speed 5 units are faster than Dwarf infantry anyway, and there was quite a lot of Dwarf infantry in this list. Hopefully it was valuable experience that will lead to success in the tournament, and for me it was a bit of a change. I haven't used the Ogres for a while, and nice to put them out on the battlefield again. I think they look quite good in the videos. They're quite a tasty looking army. I think my Stormcast quite well painted. And what's coming up next for Kings of War? Well, I'm still painting my Abyssal Dwarves. We'll see when we actually get the first game in. I'm nearly able to put out a 1,000 point army. When I do that, I'll start looking at actually putting them on the table for some games. The end goal, of course, is to have 2,000 points or more, so I can start taking them to all the regular sized tournaments. But that's going to be at least a few weeks, hopefully in time for Clash of Kings, but if not, then I would have to take a different army. But the aim is at the moment to take them to the Clash. We will see whether that comes to fruition, though. So, Ogres versus Dwarves. Dwarves reign supreme. I think this has probably gone quite long, mainly because of all the technical innovations, such as the yellow arrow that points at things, so that I don't have to give you an intimate description of where things are. I can just point in a very high-tech fashion. Anyway, let's get rid of that. And don't forget to check out all the links in the description, the various social media shenanigans, the Twitter, the Facebook group. If you're a big fan of this channel, then I've reworked the Patreon page a bit, actually, so it's not linked to battle reports, because I just make a battle report of every game that I play regardless, so it's not much of an incentive saying, oh, I will do 1 battle report a month, because I already do more than that anyway. So I've changed it so that the Patreon page actually guarantees a certain amount of live broadcasts during the month now. So if you're a fan of live shows where I just look at the hot, sizzling news in the world of wargaming and the latest releases and such, if you want that kind of content, then you should head over there. So a little bit of a tweak on that, which might act as an incentive for anyone that can't get enough of my lovely soothing voice on a weekly basis. They just want to thrust untold piles of cash in my direction so they can hear a little bit more of it without having to replay my video back catalogue. And with that, all that remains to be said, I think, is good night out there, whatever you are. And look out for all the WAFCON coverage at the start of this week. 3 tournaments, 3 tournament breakdowns. Dead Zone, Dreadball, and Kings of War Vanguard coming soon. Keep your eyes peeled.